a short video to help you write a chapter block, which you'll do throughout the year for um, understanding of the material that we read, getting at learning by yourself from the textbook, and actually reading to understand. Many times you can just read something quickly. You might forget what you just read, or you might not retain it. This is a method to pre-read, to read, to summarize, record. Yes, of course, it takes much longer to do, but it also gives you a base knowledge for understanding, and especially as you move on through your studies, through college and things like that, you're going to be expected to be given materials and understand and reproduce what's on them. So that's what the goal is, and it's, that's what we're going to go over a chapter in the text, chapter 4, on volcanoes and volcanic hazards. And the first thing that you might do is have a title, of course, something like, actually, I'm going to put lined paper on here, so let's pause. Okay, back to work here. Now with the right paper, we would have your name up here, like Jill Studies, any sort of, I'm not too concerned as long as you have your name, maybe the date you did it, and the topic, I mean the course, something like that, and then the title of the chapter would be the first thing. In this case, chapter 4, volcanoes and volcanic hazards. And I need to pause this again to orient it. Okay, so the first thing is like a pre-read of the material that you're going to be doing the chapter block on. So giving your brain an idea of what's coming is important for retaining that information. So if we go here, chapter 4 on this is on volcanoes and volcanic hazards, as I said, and see if we can get this in page view. I don't know why. All right. Maybe it's that thing. Gosh. All right, I'm going to have to pause this again. Okay, so I see that's on volcanoes and volcanic hazards. And in my pre-read, I may read the stuff in the beginning, so that's maybe this part here on why do volcanoes like Mount St. Helens erupt, and also to assist you in learning that. I might read that and these things here. So press pause on the recording and read those that beginning part. Okay, so now that you've done that, you can go to the next page, and we see the first section is something on Mount St. Helens versus Kilauea. Then we'll look at the figures in there as well. So figure 1, before and after photographs and the transformation of Mount St. Helens in May 18th, 1980. And I'm also scanning to look for any sort of definitions in here, go over those as a pre-read. I can see in the concept check 4.1 that we're comparing May 1980 eruptions to a typical eruption of Hawaii's Mount Kilauea. The next section is on the nature of volcanic eruptions, and I would read figure 2. I see a definition here on viscosity. on the magma's mobility. The more viscous the material, um, it's the thicker, the greater resistance to flow. So that's giving me an idea of that. I could look at table 4.1 where magmas have different compositions from mafic, intermediate, and felsic, and those lead to different viscosities and gas contents. And I would continue doing this through the sections that I was going in. Some of these figures are more scientifically based, where others are more of interest to show you the phenomenon in action, like more of a picture, a photograph, than an actual figure. So I'm going to quickly go through this to the end, but you would take a longer time to go over that. And going through, I like this textbook, by the way, because of some of the photographs and the figures that they put in it, and their integration of those. So going through the material. You can see you want to start this early. And then the thing that I would do at the end of after I go through and look at all the figures and look at the definitions and look at the titles is I would read the review part here, the primary factors. It's not really in focus for me to read, but if you have your textbook out, go through and read that now and take the time to pre-read. And so press pause and then come back. Okay, now that you're back and you've done your pre-reading, the 4 parts of the chapter block are the outline. Now the outline's just like Roman numeral 1, 2, 3, and it's just like the topic headings on there. It's real simple. And then secondly, you put on definitions, and these could be things that are in bold, in italic, or anything that you want to add. 3 is summary, and then each chapter block needs 5 reproduced figures. Now you can make your own or just recopy the ones in there, and it shouldn't just be the figure but also the caption. So if you want to be creative and do your own, that's fine. The summary just needs to be a sentence or two, or maybe more, depending on the length of the section, because the length of the sections really vary. But you only need 5 figures, and make sure they're good scientific ones that explain what's going on. You could use tables as well as in replacement of a figure. Okay, so if I go to the reading now, if I go back to the beginning of this one, so the first reading section is on Mount St. Helens versus Kilauea. And so the outline portion, I have the title up there, might be just Mount St. Helens versus Kilauea. Hopefully I spelled that right, although, let's see, A-U-E-A. Oops. Sorry about that. A-U-E-A. Kilauea. Okay, so that's just would be the outline portion of that section. It's just that. And then you go back to the reading, and you would take the time to read it. So, and as you read, you might underline things that you would want to put in your summary and underline things that you would want for definitions. There's no definitions in this part, other than there might be something that stands out to you. So take the time now to do that reading and underlining. Okay, now that you've done the reading, we might do a summary on it. And so I wrote a summary here. Oh, first definitions, but you note that the definitions are none. So we just do definitions Done. And then I'm going to do a summary. I like color when I do mine to help distinguish the sections and make it more easy to study later. That's another reason for doing these chapter blocks, is to have an outline to study. So in the summary section that I wrote May 18th, 1980. Mount St. Helens erupted. With a blast that blew out I'm going to stop writing in cursive because it's too hard to read. Blast that blew out the north flank and lowered the elevation 1,350 feet. Accompanying mud flows carried ash, trees, and water-saturated rock debris "18 miles down the Tuttle River." "59 dead." Oops. Eruption ejected nearly a cubic kilometer of ash and rock debris. Some 18,000 meters into the stratosphere. So there's that part of it. And then the next part was on Hawaii. Maybe I'll put that in blue. Hawaii's Kilauea, relatively quiet. Outpourings of fluid lava. Gentle, in quotes, with some fiery displays. How most recent spill destroyed 180 homes. And a national park visitor center. And there's my summary for the first section. The next section is on the nature of volcanic eruptions. So, another piece of paper. Nature of volcanics. So there's my outline portion of the chapter block. Who wouldn't want to know about the nature of volcanic eruptions? Okay, so this one has more sections in it for the outline portions, like an intro, factors affecting viscosity, and why do volcanoes erupt. And so those will all be sections. And if I look at the reading on here, I look here, the nature of volcanic eruptions, there's this introduction, and then there's factors affecting viscosity, and then, come on, why do volcanoes erupt? But you can see, like, so these are pretty large sections, right? And then it gets into the next part with materials. But in those three sections, I've decided to do those separately, the read, summary, definitions for each of those sections within the section, okay? So if I go back, the first section I'm going to read and work on is the introduction here, which is short, but this part right in here. So press pause and read the intro. Okay, now that you've done that, we'll have on here a one intro that's part of our outline. And on there for definitions, there was in there the definitions of viscosity. So and I wrote down viscous equals sticky. To help me remember what that means, the more viscous, the greater resistance to flow. That was it for the definition. Now, in the summary portion, I wrote down violent or gentle eruption. Question mark. It depends on the magma's composition. On its temperature. And amount of dissolved gases. Explosive eruptions may be 5 times more viscous. Than quiet eruptions. Okay, and then there were no figures for that part. Then the next thing I would do is go on to read the section on factors affecting viscosity. To do that now, this section, or in here you see volatiles, you'd underline that. You have a table in there, And that will take you through there. Okay, on that section, the previous page. Okay, press pause and read that then. Okay, good. So 2 then is factors affecting viscosity. And for definitions, I had volatiles. And the volatiles are defined as gaseous components of magma. Mainly water, or H2O. Okay? But also things like carbon dioxide, sulfur dioxide. Okay, that was it for definitions, and then the summary portion. Wrote, heating magma makes it more fluid and less viscous. Lava cools and begins to congeal. Its mobility decreases. Chemical composition matters a lot in volcanic behavior. And SiO2 content, or silica content, is a big one. Mafic is approximately 50% SiO2. Intermediate magmas, approximately 60%. And felsic magmas, approximately 70% SiO2. The more silica, the greater the viscosity. Rhyolitic felsic magmas are very viscous. Basaltic or mafic magmas are more fluid. The amount of volatiles in a magma affects mobility. Water tends to increase. Fluidity. Okay, so that was the summary, and then the first figure that I'm going to do here is put in the table that's in there, table 4.1. So in this count as a figure, table 4.1 says in its caption would be magmas, different compositions, different compositions, properties vary. And for that table, we're going to do composition, and the compositions that I have are mafic, basaltic, magma, intermediate, andesitic, magma, felsic, or rhyolitic, magma, and the silica content of those at least 50% approximately intermediate, approximately 60% most, approximately 70%, and then viscosity, least, intermediate, greatest, and then gas content, least 1 to 2%, intermediate 3 to 4%, and most 4 to 6%. So there's a figure. Now, on some other than a table, you draw the figure, putting labels on it, and putting captions, and having a caption. Every figure should have, or table should have a caption. Okay, so the next section that I see in my reading, that section had definition, summary, and a figure. And in this one, why do volcanoes erupt? And it goes on to discuss why that's the case, and I put a summary and some definitions in, and maybe even this figure 4.3 or up to 4.5. So you can decide on which figure you decide to place in there. I'm just going to get you started with the definition that's on there. After you've done the reading, you would do a new page. And this would be, if I look back at my summary here, was 2, so this would be 3. Oh, actually, no, it isn't. It's part of 2. Now I remember. 3 into, which is why do volcanoes erupt. Still part of the outline portion. And the definition is on eruptive columns. That's the one that I have out of that. And it states highly viscous rhyolitic magmas may produce explosive clouds of hot ash and gases that evolve into buoyant plumes. And then the summary. Oh, I thought on here in the summary portion of this that the last paragraph of that section was a really good summary of all that it was discussing in the section. So the viscosity of magma plus the quantity of dissolved gases Okay, I'm going to stop here, but you would continue on because I've discussed all the necessary parts of this, the outline, the definitions, the summary, and the figures. And then at the end of all your reading, you can go through and review your chapter block for understanding, and then you'll be surprised, I hope, that on how much you can actually learn on your own using this technique. It takes a long time, but as you're doing it, you're getting a study base that you can use to review for tests later, and you're getting the knowledge that you need to do well on the test and to retain the material. And then when I talk about it in class, it all should be gelling for you. The idea would be to do these chapter blocks while we're going over them in class as well, going over the material. And so it really starts to hopefully enter into the depths of your brain, so to speak. And so I would continue with this section with a summary and maybe add a figure or two. Remember, you only need a total of 5 figures per chapter block, but you can always do more if you want. Okay, hopefully that was helpful.